Hi everyone, hope everyone is doing well today. Thank you for joining me today on this talk. My name's Leanne Lombe and I'm the head of the Riot Forge team at Riot Games. Today I will be just giving a talk on forging your path as a developer. Just a really short, concise talk around, some of the things that you can do if you're starting up a new studio or if you're looking for some form of partnership, just some key takeaways that might help you on that journey. So let's get right into it. Great. So again, just a little bit more about me, just so I can set the scene for you. As I said, my name's Leanne. I head up our third-party publishing division at Riot Games. I have three clear passions in life. I love games, of course, and I have done since I was young. I love cats, and these are my two cats in the pictures. And I also have a pretty big obsession with cars. That's my Aston Martin. And I love Formula One. I've loved cars for many years and basically engage in anything to do with that. So that's kind of the things I do in my spare time: play games, drive cars, and spend time with my cats. So today, the contents of my talk does, come from a variety of different companies I've worked at and games I've worked at. So I just wanted to give a quick overview of my background. As mentioned, I started off very young playing video games, probably, around 6 or 7 years old when I got my first PC, and that was an Atari ST. And my first real video game was Nebulous, which is what you can see here on the screen. And the graphics are obviously quite a long time ago. And then I got my first console, which was a Sega Mega Drive, and fell in love with games after that, especially Streets of Rage, which, is still one of my favorite games of all time. And I went to a university and did something roughly related to video games. And then during university, managed to get a job as a QA tester. And so that was really my way into the games industry at Stainless Games. And I worked my way up from QA manager to assistant producer to producer, and worked on games such as Magic the Gathering and Scrabble and Risk, amongst others. And then I moved to Japan for a year or so and worked on the publishing side of games, working on things like Monster Hunter for a company called Satire. And then once I got back, I had the opportunity to join Electronics Arts. And as I mentioned, I love cars, and I was working on the Need for Speed franchise for many years. And this was, really a dream come true for me because I love games and I love cars. So it was a perfect match. But after many years, really needed something different. And that's when I moved to LA and started working on League of Legends. And it still, blows my mind that I'm working on a game where so many millions of players play the game every month. It really is quite crazy, but an amazing opportunity. So where I am now at Riot is heading up our third-party publishing label. And so the talk today really captures some of the things that we've focused on during setting up Riot Forge. And we announced last year, and we're working with multiple developers across a variety of different League of Legends games in different genres. And these games are focused outside of competitive games like the MOBA. So very different types of motivations than, a competitive online multiplayer experience. And we have announced 2 of these already. We have announced Rune King, which is a turn-based RPG being developed with Airship Syndicate. And we have also announced Convergence. We are working with Double Stallion on this game. And every day, I'm working with different developers and we are looking for new partners. And so there's some things that we've experienced and some things that we've learned on how we approach finding partners. And just want to try and summarize some of those key points as a publisher and some of the things that publishers might care about. Of course, every publisher is slightly different, but these should be some key takeaways to just think about as you're looking for partnerships, collaborations, or investments in your studio. So today it really is just to give you a way to think about how you can stand out when it comes to your studio, when it comes to reaching out for collaborations and investments. Now, obviously, one size does not fit all in this case. So I don't expect this to apply to every studio or to every, partnership, but it does summarize some of the things I've seen, across different studios that's really helped people to stand out and get the attention of a publisher or of an investor, for example. So ultimately, my goal here is to leave you today with some thoughts on how you can ensure your studio stands out for opportunities. So to start with, there are many different types of collaboration, as we know, whether it's a developer to publisher or a developer to investor or developer to developers. Many different ways that collaboration and partnership can exist. For Riot Forge, we focus on the League of Legends IP, but really leveraging the experience and expertise from our developers that we work with. And we allow them to creatively own the vision for the game and reimagine League into different experiences. So we are kind of a publisher that works with external developers by giving them a lot of freedom in their own voice. But you could also work with a publisher that's much more interested in investment or licensing of an IP or traditional work for hire or outsourcing and even porting, for instance. There's many different types. As mentioned, we don't do traditional work for hire because we're sort of not coming with a predefined pitch, but it's not full licensing either because we still maintain the ownership of the League of Legends IP and we fund all of the development on the Forge side. So many types of different partnerships, and that really depends on what you want from your studio, where you see your studio going, what the vision is for your long term and what kind of portfolio you want to have in your studio. But once you've figured out what type of partnership you want to go for, that's when you can really dig into, okay, how can we stand out against the competition and against the other studios that are also looking for this type of partnership? So in summary, I believe there are three main focus areas that can help you stand out, that can help you differentiate against others and set your studio up for success. This also applies to when you're presenting your ideas as well, whether that's pitching to a developer or pitching to a publisher or an investment partner. I think it's really important for studios to focus in on what's important to them and what their studio means. So that first one is really around studio identity. The second one is around game quality and the products that you've made before or the ideas that you have and how this represents your studio and your DNA. And the unique DNA is really the piece that sets you apart from kind of every other studios, or there's a ton of amazing game studios out there. And it's really about finding that uniqueness in your own studio. So I'm going to dig into a little bit about each of these areas and kind of what they mean from my perspective. So firstly, when a studio has a really clear identity with the way they approach development and the games they make, it creates a really strong vision, knowing what that studio is about and what's important to that studio. Some of the ways to achieve this is really thinking about what kind of studio you want to create. Is it work for hire? Is it porting expertise? Is it outsourcing? Is it working with other people's IPs or your own IPs? Kind of asking the questions, what's your speciality? Why should people work with you? And what's the focus of your experience? So I think it's really important for studios to think about what their vision is, what their identity is, look through your strategy, what your long-term goals are, and really apply that into your pitch presentation to investors or publishers so they can really see what the studio is all about. And when I think about studio identity, I like to read a lot of books and in different, mediums, whether it's about games or whether it's, about teamwork or leadership. But when I think about studio identity, one of the things that always comes to mind is this book, Essentialism, by Greg McKeown. It's really interesting because he has a lot of case studies in there about minimalism and focusing on the right thing. And one of the case studies is around a marketing studio, an ad agency company. And they've been around for some time, but they are really struggling. They had morphed into a situation where they did a little bit of everything. They did presentations, they did ad campaigns, they did, asset creation, asset manipulation, so many different services that they provide to a range of different clients. And part of that, they found that they actually stopped getting so many clients. And the CEO knew that they were good at one really great thing. They were consistently really good at presentations, at delivering really high quality presentations for their clients. If their clients were looking, you know, to create a presentation around something specific, that was their expertise. They would create high quality polished presentations for their clients. And so they went on an offsite and they went through all a retrospective of all the successful clients and partnerships they had, you know, in the past. And one of the reoccurring themes was presentations. That was the one where they were able to deliver super successfully to their clients. And so they decided to focus in on that and pivot their company to solely offering presentations as their service. And as soon as they did that, they really created a clear identity for their agency. And the one thing that they leaned into so well was the thing that really, you know, turned them around and meant they could go from struggling to thriving, because the clients knew what they should approach this agency for. And so I felt like that was a really amazing case study of how, you know, doing too much can sometimes create a situation where you're not doing enough to, you know, you're not focusing on quality, it's more about quantity. So I think this can apply to game studios as well, you know, thinking about what experience the studio creates or what genre is the expertise of the studio. It doesn't mean you have to make the same game every time, of course, but it's more about finding that core identity, which appears in the products that you make, in the games that you're creating. What is that, you know, genre or experience or piece in the game that really helps you create an identity for the studio? So next, game quality. This is probably an obvious one, but ensuring that the games coming out of a studio are the highest possible quality in the constraints you have, of course, you know, within the budget you have, the time, the people, you know, not everybody has AAA budgets and teams. So it's really about focusing on the quality bar within your constraints. It does not mean that you have to make 100 Metacritic game every time, because that's not realistic. There are many different layers of quality, from, you know, authenticity to player resonance. What's important is being able to show that you're able to hit, you know, that player expectation and that player resonance with the games that you're making. Also doesn't mean you have to, you know, sell billions of copies of the game. And even if you don't have a game to begin with, it's more about showing how you value quality and that you care about making a great game, and how you've potentially, you know, achieved that previously. And lastly, this is the one that I personally am attached to the most, and what I look for in developers, especially when I'm thinking about how things might translate into the League of Legends IP. It's thinking about DNA, and I use the term DNA to specifically stand for design, narrative, and art. And this is really the creative, you know, triangle for games, and some of those core elements that make up a video game. So as a studio, it's really powerful for a studio to have something that's really unique, something that can help drive that identity that I was talking about before. Whether that's, you know, I think art is an easy one to point to because it's very visually unique, but there can also be some elements within design and narrative as well. And really thinking about that in more detail, you know, the art style, as I mentioned, this one is very obvious. If you've created the best pixel art games in the world, then you obviously have a very clear visual identity with pixel art. But it could also be a unique animation, for example, or some studios have really unique art styles that stand out, like Gris as a game. And then also in some of the other areas, it could be narrative. So maybe it's the way that you tell stories in your game. Maybe it's the great VO or the really strong character emotion and interaction, like a game like Haven. And then it can also come from design, you know, a certain mechanic that comes from the studio, a certain system or a certain design meta loop that the studio has created that really helps them stand out from other games. And it's something that, you know, has been iterated on over time throughout multiple games. And is something that's very unique to that particular studio. So I think having something in this DNA triangle really helps studios stand out. And whether, you know, that's where you excel. That's your thing that you can really lean into. And I think publishers do like to look for studios that can fill a gap or fill an opportunity. Like I mentioned, for League of Legends, it's very much thinking about what are some of the best ways we can reimagine the League of Legends IP. And there are obviously certain, visual identities, certain narrative approaches and designs that would, work better than others. So that's something that I look for when I'm looking into development studios. So I think the key here is don't be afraid to lean into that DNA, whatever the studio has as that uniqueness. It's always a really good thing to lean into that. So to summarize there, 3 key areas that I believe could help you stand out, get attention from publishers. I think, spending some time thinking about the studio identity, what the focus is, what a studio does so well, and finding something that can help amplify that identity, I think is really beneficial. And then game quality, this can be from the games that you've made, or it can come from a prototype or a pitch, for example, that you're showing. And then lastly, the DNA. What's the differentiator that the studio has, or that the game has, or how the design, art, and narrative is approached by the studio. So moving on then, all of this information of some ways that you can stand out, and then it's really about how do you find a partner. So of course, there's many ways to get introduced to publishers or investors. Of course, events like this where, we can't meet in person at the moment, but we still have a lot of platforms to be able to talk and connect and book meetings. So that's always a great way. The one thing I would recommend on reaching out on LinkedIn and things like that is being specific. A lot of people reach out and just say things like, I've got an idea for Lee, can we talk? Or, my studio does this, can we talk? There's a lot of those emails. And so I think it's worth being really upfront in things like LinkedIn or email reach outs about what you can provide, not just asking for a meeting or not just saying, I've got an idea, can we meet? Don't be afraid to be really upfront, because I think that's when you can get the attention of publishers. Be very specific about, what your unique offering is. Many people just kind of email with the same template, and it's really hard to get each other's attention that way, I think. So trying to think about ways to be specific in those reach outs. And then once you've found the publisher or the investor, definitely want to make, the most out of that collaboration. And again, this doesn't apply to all types of partnerships, because I think, levels of support can change based on the business terms, the relationship, the contract, and everything that's created at the beginning. But from my perspective, a publisher should really be there to take the pressure off the developer so that the developer can focus on making a great game. And again, from my perspective, I feel like a great publisher really focuses on amplifying the game through bespoke marketing, through the game trailer, through events or influencers, really understanding how to gain awareness, and ultimately that acquisition from players is what a great publisher will do for a developer. And that developer-publisher partnership should definitely be two-way and benefit both parties. Of course, in a perfect world, the publisher gets the developer's unique experience and this amazing talent, and the developer gets that unique support really required to get the game out into players' hands. So a little bit more specifically about what we look for on Riot Forge, just so you can get an idea of what type of publisher we are. I think the key things are from Riot Forge is, again, we look for studios that have a unique identity, something that would be great to reimagine League of Legends in. We also look for developers that are experienced in a certain genre or understand player motivations in a particular game experience. We also look for developers that have released a game together in the past. There are so many amazing indie developers out there. There are so many startups as well, which I would love to support in the future. for now, we are looking for developers that have made a game together before and kind of understand how that process works, because Forge is new as well and we're still growing. And so working with experienced developers is really a good setup for success for both parties. And then from a game perspective, Forge is very much focused on making single player story-driven experiences, very different to, our games at Riot Games, where we make multiplayer competitive experiences. We also want to provide players with ways to engage in the story and find different ways to experience the League of Legends universe, and just new ways to reimagine that. So we're very much focused on completable, bespoke experiences at Riot Forge. So that's a quick fire summary for some of the things that might help you stand out when you're looking for a partnership or a collaboration or trying to find a publisher. So hopefully that helped. And if you have any questions at all, please let me know.
All right, we are back live. I don't know if we have Leanne. Are you there?
Yes,
there we go.
I'm here.
Great presentation.
Hi.
Thanks a lot for being here. So a couple of questions for you. You mentioned that unique DNA concept. So can you talk a little bit about that, and any insight on how developers can identify and find their unique DNA?
Yeah, so it's something that we talked a lot about when we started up Forge. What are some of the ways that we can look at different developers and different partnerships and see what would be important? And some of the things that are important to League of Legends is the way that we design the game, the look and the feel of League of Legends, and then also storytelling. So those three elements, the design, the narrative, and the art, the DNA, are some of the key elements for League of Legends specifically. But I also think that for any game, that's kind of the key connecting points. Your design of the game, the narrative, and the art all come together to form your high quality experience. So I think studios should, have a look at the games that they've made in the past, see what connects all those games. Like, what's the core theme that runs through all their games? Is it pixel art, for example? Are they really great at, that type of art style? Are they really great at narrative interactions or voiceover or dialogue or storytelling? Have a look at what the team really excels at and what the team really understands about making games and lean into that.
Great. And the second question is actually about Riot Forge. So are you guys focusing on any specific platforms right now? Or do you exclude any platforms?
We are focused anywhere where players are playing. So all across all platforms right now, there's no platforms that we exclude. We're not digging into AR or VR right now. That's two areas that we're not yet looking into or see an opportunity there, but certainly across all console platforms, PC, mobile. We just announced Rune King, which will be across console and PC. So yes, we are open to many different platforms. It really depends on the type of game that's being made, the type of players that we're making that game for, and also the developer's experience.
Thank you very much, Leanne, and I hope that in the coming years we'll learn news of a League game being developed from Eastern Europe or Romania. So,
yes, I hope so too.
All right, I know you have another session coming up soon, yes. So I'll let you prepare for that. Feel free to stick around the Discord and the Pine chat later on, if in case you want to get in touch with people. Enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.